the producer to tell me we started. We started? Hi, useState today. In the last video for React series, we covered, what did we cover? Notes. We covered how to actually pass data from the child component to the parent component. We also covered how to pass data from the parent component to the child component. So if you haven't seen that video, please take a look at that one before this one. Otherwise, this one, you still should be able to follow along, but it will make this video a lot easier. So today we will be covering still passing some data to other child components, but a new feature called useState and how that's going to actually help us re-render some components, or at least some component data. All right, so I have Visual Studio open. So we are working with useState, in which that is going to be the individual state management for the actual component. Here what we have is just a standard application in which we have our app, and we have also created a child component as well. I have the child component split to the right and the app on the left, and I've actually brought in useState from React. So what we're going to do is actually utilize that and show you a couple of examples on how we can pass that information down to a child component. So first thing we're going to do is just do a const, and we'll do number and set number. All right, and we're going to have that equal to useState with a default value of 0. So how would you read this? You have a variable called number, and you can call that any number you would like. And you have the function set number. Again, that can actually be any actual name as well. And that set number value, or actually function, is going to be the function that updates the actual number. Okay, so let's take a look and see what that actually looks like. So let's just create a span, and inside that span, we're gonna say, let's see, our current value, or our current useState value is, and then to access the number variable, we'll use it just like that. And you'll notice to the right, you'll see our current useState value is 0. Now, let's actually update that utilizing the actual function that we created called set number. Set number is linked with number. All right, so we'll just create a button. And what kind of name can we give that? We'll just say increase useState value. This way, it's the best actual number the best actual naming convention for a button, right? So if I click on that, nothing's going to actually happen at all. Let me just refresh that. We still have our actual number here. And do I have any space? What do we need to do? Let's add an on-click event. That way, we're going to actually utilize an arrow function to update the actual set number. Now you can create a standalone function, but I'll show you two different ways to actually increase that. We'll place it on the same line. So we can do set number, okay, and what we're going to do is set number is going to allow for you to access the previous value. All right, and this name could be anything as well. We'll say previous value is going to be previous value, as we're starting to cut off of the screen. Previous value plus 1. Okay, so when you're working with the actual state itself, how are you to read this? All right, so we have the set number, which is going to update the actual number. And then what we would have here is our previous value, which you can actually use any name here. We can say previous num if we wanted to, all right, or previous value. It's entirely up to you, all right, whatever makes sense to you. So we'll say previous num is equal to previous num plus 1. Actually not equals to, but it's taking in previous 1, which is always going to be the previous previous state. So let's see what happens when we click on this. And okay, so when we click on that, now what we have here, let's add a little space here. we actually have the actual number being increased. So you can take a look at here. And we're dealing with the virtual DOM where the only thing that's actually changing in that is the actual number itself. So if we take a look here, we should see this 18 highlighted and changed. So you see how it goes to 19. I'll click again. It goes to 20 and so forth. All right, now let's actually bring this down a little bit. The child is extra, it's definitely squeezed out over there. Let's see if we can read it a little better. There we go. This gives us a little more room as we're all over the screen here. And let's add another button, and I'll show you another way to actually increase that state variable there. So let's add another button. And let's see, we'll just call it another way to increase the value. All right. And what we'll do is we'll create an actual function. This one, we'll call it like a little helper function. So we'll call that const, let's see, helper, increase. We'll do increase useState. All right. And again, you can call this anything you would like. Okay, and what I'm going to do in here is attach this function to the on-click event of this button. Same thing we actually did right here. Okay, all right, so we're going to say on-click, and then on-click, what do we want to do? We want to increase the actual useState. And then from there, if we can get more room here, let's close this child since we're not actually using it. And so what do we got here? On click. So when we click on another way to increase the value, which is our super long naming convention for an actual button, we are actually going to console log just to make sure it's working. We are here just to make sure the actual piping is working here. So let's see what happens when we do that. We have the console here, and I'll just refresh. Okay, so we are here. So each time I click on this button, what we get here is we are accessing this function. And we're not automatically calling it. We don't want to do that because that will automatically call it. We want to actually just reference it. So we're getting in here, and now how do we update the state value of number? Well, we can actually just say set number. So we'll do that. Set number is equal to what? Normally you would see like number equals number plus 1. So when you're using the actual hooks of useState, we would do just the previous value. So we'll do previous value. And again, this could be any number that you would like. So previous value plus 1. All right, so that's yet another way. If you'll see the differences between this line here. All right, so you can actually run the function directly on the on-click event, or you can actually use the actual function itself, where you actually create the function and then actually call the useState function that's going to actually update the actual number itself. Okay, and so let's just double check again. So we're increasing the value here. We're increasing the value here, so they both actually work, and because it's two different buttons, we're still accessing the previous state, right? It's always taking in the actual previous state. So from there, what can we do from there? Okay, we could actually pass down, we can pass these actual values down to the child component and see if there's any actual changes there. All right, because again, before in the previous video, we were actually accessing props. We were sending props down. So let's actually take a look at that. And we do have the child there. So let's split that. We'll split it on the bottom. We'll split it down. All right. All right. So for the most part, you kind of have a good idea as to how to actually use useState. You can have an actual zero value. You can have an empty array of arrays or an array of objects. It really depends on how you want to actually work with your data. So we have this child here, and let's actually place the child. Let's place it below the button. So we'll say child, and we do got to make sure that we actually import that as well. Let's create a little room here, and I did not automatically import that. Here we go. All right, so it is imported at the actual top, which is good in order for us to use that. And inside the child, which will be right here, we're going to access some data. And what do we want? Let's just make sure the actual child is working here. So let's just put in a span, and or we'll actually put a paragraph. And this is, we'll say this is sent from our parent. All right, and then what are we going to send from our parent? And so we can see that the actual child component is working because we have the actual text. This is sent from our parent. All right, and the child is actually being utilized there. But what we're going to do is let's send the actual number down. So let's do that. Let's send the actual number down. How do we want to do that? Let's see. Oh, I remember from actually using props. So let's do this. Let's go to the child, and in that child, we're going to say our number from the parent, or from parent. We can do that. And what is that number? Well, the number is a useState variable. Okay, and now we should be able to access our number from parent, which has the value of number. And what is number? Number is a useState variable, and there is a function that can actually update that as well, but we did not actually send that. So now let's go into the actual child component on line 3, and when we send props, in order to get the value of props, we need to actually use props and then anything else after it. And now what we can do is say props dot what? Props dot the actual name of our prop that we gave the child component. And now we should be able to see this number. So let's do a refresh. And what do we have here? This is sent from our parent. And so usually when you don't see the actual output that you're looking for, you just got to kind of make sure everything is connected properly, where we have our actual set number function, we have the actual number variable itself that's going to be changed or updated by the set number function. But it looks like when I actually put the empty array in there and deleted it, we still need to have an initial state. So our initial state here is going to be 0. And then from there, what we can do, as mentioned in the previous videos, is pass this down. Since this is our child component, we're going to pass this particular prop down to the actual child. And we can access that by using these curly brackets here and that. So now, and of course, this is definitely starting to look a little ugly over here, but that is quite all right. Can we add some divs in there just to kind of make it look a little, we'll just add some divs in there for now, just to add a little bit of separation there. And okay, so that goes down on another line. And then we have another button that's there. So we'll just kind of keep it like that. All right, so now this is sent from our parent. All right, and what is sent from the parent? The actual prop of our number from parent. And our number from parent this is a prop that we're sending from our parent to the child. And from there, what is the value of that prop? The prop value is number. Number being the same state variable that we used. Okay, and we're passing that down. Now, since we're passing that down to another child, we should still be able to increase that. All right, so now we're increasing the useState value. Now this button here, this button is actually in the parent. And actually, if we close this here, we can kind of see that. So we are increasing, utilizing the button that's in the parent, but we're passing that value down to the child. Okay, so that's both of our buttons here, utilizing them in different ways. And we can actually, I can comment this out since we don't actually need this one here. That's just for you, for your notes. But we're still increasing that. Now, here's the thing, but what's the big deal with that? Nothing too crazy, but let's try to add another prop. Let's add a prop variable. Let's say just a regular variable. We'll say let my number equal 1. Okay. So this is not a useState variable at all. This is just a variable that we are assigning the number of 1 to it. And what we're going to do is let's actually pass that as a child as well and see if we can actually update that. So let's see, our variable, we'll just call it our variable number, our variable number. And what was the name of it was called my number. Okay, so my number. Okay, so we'll see if that is being passed down. And so here it is as a prop. And let's actually add it here. So what we'll do is we'll just add another paragraph tag. And let's see, this is our variable. Yeah, we'll do it. Variable number from what? Oh, let's spell variable, right? This is our variable number that is not a useState variable. Okay, just a regular one. And we're gonna call it, what is it? It's props dot our number. Here we go. Let's just copy that and see what that looks like. Okay, so this is our variable number that is not the useState variable. Did I just put var? Okay, all right, we'll leave it as var. Now, here's the thing though. Let's try to actually increase that. So if we try to increase that, let's see if it actually changes. Because the useState variables here, when you change the useState variables, those will actually cause a re-render. But what will happen if we try to increase our variable? Let's see what happens with that. So we'll just write this out and we'll say my number, my number equals my number plus 1. Okay, and we'll put a little log here. Trying to increase value on the page. Or at least trying to increase our standard variable. And let's see what happens when we do that. Oh, and actually, let's actually attach that. Do we need to attach that, or do we just need to call that? Let's take a look here. Okay, and we're here. Yeah, let's just actually let's call it from, where do we want to call that? Actually, let's just call it on the click. There we go. We'll use an actual button. All right, so we created the actual function. Okay, I'll copy that. And we'll create a button here. We'll do it right outside the div. And we'll call it increase standard. Increase my number variable. All right, and let's add that click event. Okay, so now what we have here is when we click on the, where's the button? I don't see it. Here it is. Increase my number var. All right, so this is our useState variable value. All right, that is this here that's actually being updated. Initialized to 0, function that is going to update the variable itself. But here we have my number being passed down to the child as our variable number, which is actually showing up right, where is that? This variable, this is the number that's being, this is our variable number that is not a useState variable. Okay, so that's just our regular number. So if we were to change that to 10, or let's change it to 9, then we see that the actual 9 is there. But now that we have that, let's see if we can actually get it to change. So where is our button? Increase on click. So if we click on this, let's see what happens. Increase my number variable. And it should increase by 1. The only thing is, it's not causing a re-render at all. Our number is still staying at 9. All right. Our useState variable that's being passed down to our child, that's updating. that's updating right here. But our regular number, which is not a useState variable at all, is not updating at all. Okay, so we can click on this all we want. We do get the console log just to kind of state that we are in there. And just to make sure here, wait a minute, our variable number, okay, increase variable number, okay, yeah. Oh, what is this increase useState? Maybe I'm not using that there, but increase variable number, okay, we are still getting the actual log here. All right, so those are the main differences between the useState variables and the actual regular variables that you would pass down as props. So you want to think of the useState variables as some type of data that's going to change within your component. But as far as, you know, and you can still pass that down as a prop, but there are standard props that are not going to change. Those are just going to be just, you can kind of think of those like as hard coded values that they can still change as well, but they're not going to cause any re-renders unless it's a state variable. Now, there are a number of different ways to actually use state management. This is one of the ways that we will use, we'll actually utilize the actual state management. So we're using useState now. We'll also look at context API. We'll look at Redux as well. So there's a number of different ways to actually utilize that. If you have any questions, feel free to leave some comments in the comment section. Subscribe for new videos. You want to make sure that you're actually getting the notifications. And other than that, I know it's a long one, but you really got to understand how to be able to pass that data from one component to the next. So take a look at the previous videos. There'll be plenty more to come. Mr. Stack out. Have a good day.